The first time I met Mike Bloomberg was in the late 1990s at a dinner party in his Manhattan townhouse. It was a typical New York gathering of the moneyed and the prominent, thrown together for an evening of polite conversation that goes in one ear and out the other. I recall that Dan Rather was there, and Peter Jennings, and that the five-story home was an overdone tribute to marble, formal British furniture, and attention-grabbing works of art. Bloomberg himself barely made an impression. He sat at the head of the table and said little, looking bored. Later, as rumors grew that he wanted to run for mayor, I was astonished, and I was not the only one. That guy? The dull, quiet one whose home looks like a museum? I'd seen mayors come and go, and Bloomberg did not fit the mold any which way. The slight, self-made billionaire was the opposite of the boisterous characters New Yorkers enjoy. He had created an improbably successful company, a financial information giant that grew from a sophisticated computer terminal he developed. Few beyond Wall Street and the City of London understood much about that, or knew that Bloomberg was a generous philanthropist. But the elaborate ad campaign he could bankroll would fill in the blanks. Recognition wasn't the problem. The problem was, it sure seemed, Mike Bloomberg. He didn't have the experience or the temperament. He didn't know much about the city, and the city knew less about him. Success in business was supposed to make him a good mayor? He was trying to buy City Hall like it's a cup of coffee, growled Jimmy Breslin. He was spending tens of millions of dollars of his own money to lip-sync the lyrics of politics, wrote Bobber Bay. By my reckoning, he was a rich guy on an ego trip, who should not have gotten anywhere near City Hall, no matter how many millions of his own dollars he spent in pursuit of victory. After he won in a fluke, many New Yorkers remained skeptical, figuring he'd be a caretaker mayor, serving one 4-year term and moving on out. New York is hard enough for a seasoned politician to run, let alone a billionaire stiff. Bloomberg was nothing like one of those naturally expansive rich men like Nelson Rockefeller or the open, good-humored Warren Buffett. He couldn't make a speech, couldn't or wouldn't answer a question persuasively, and projected a solemnity that approached sourness. A small, graying man with a few too many slightly bucked teeth that discouraged broad smiles, he looked like the businessman he was in his uniforms of expensive dark suits and loafers. He did not pretend to have patience for small talk, or even a modicum of introspection. He did not feel your pain, and would not admit to any of his own. Curt, profane, cranky, and willful, Bloomberg said and did what he wanted, hated to admit error, and was insistently private to the point of paranoia. Even after his many well-compensated handlers burnished a vanity version of the Bloomberg story, selling it in campaign literature and ads that filled TV screens like electronic wallpaper, New Yorkers did not get to know Bloomberg the way they got to know his predecessors. That never fully changed. Years into his mayoralty, otherwise well-informed people who learned I was writing his biography revealed a basic ignorance about him, asking whether he had inherited his wealth, wondering how many times he was married, if he had any children, and, despite nasal evidence to the contrary, if he was a native New Yorker. A public that dines out on stories about its political celebrities, about Barack Obama's childhood, Bill Clinton's appetites, Joe Biden's gaffes, was starved by Mike Bloomberg. Diffidence is not supposed to succeed with a public that wants politicians to feel its pain. Neither is aloof elitism. Yet the diffident, elite Bloomberg would become one of the most effective mayors in the city's history, holding on to high approval ratings for an unusually long time in punishing New York, earning the public's respect, if not its warmth. It is the paradox of Michael Bloomberg that his great power and wealth were never matched by the power of his personality. But, most notably, in his early, most difficult days as mayor, he succeeded anyway in a tough political environment, guiding the city through both bad economic times and good ones. In more than 30 years of covering New York, I certainly had never encountered a leader like Bloomberg, the city's first, and no doubt last, prideful plutocrat.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.